guys. How's everyone doing? I can see Jianju69 and Dr. Mason. Yeah, Dr. Mason, I'm excited. You said you're ready. Yeah, I'm ready too. So I'm just waiting for Ada to come in so that we can begin the stream. But I think there's a comment here from Jianju69. It says a self-enforced cultural stereotype. For example, if you study hard and speak proper English, you will be decried as acting white, a primary factor in the stagnation of the black community. Well, I don't know how. I, Scotty, how are you doing? Welcome, Scotty. Dr. Mason, I'm doing well. And you, how are you doing? So, as regards these comments by Jianju69, this acting white phenomenon, how prevalent is it? I mean, how much of that accounts to the behavior of racialized black people? Is it something that so prevalent, or are there studies to actually show that this is really prevalent and it's a problem, or it may just be a handful of cases? It may just be oh, Dr. Mason says it's very prevalent. Wow, that's shocking. That is shocking. Hey Asta, how you doing? Welcome to the live stream. So if it's so the acting white phenomenon is part of the evidence for how racism masquerades as race. Okay. I think I saw a video today yeah, that was saying that math is racist, and it just blew my mind. I was like, how can maths be racist? How can something that everybody uses, so it means that a black person should not be required to do maths because it's a white man thing. A black person should not be required to learn, say, classical music or some other stuff. It's a white man thing. So those things are sort of racist. Those things are wow. So it blows my mind. It blows my mind that to see that something like that is prevalent. That if you're speaking proper English, that you will be regarded as acting white. If you're dressing in a certain way, behaving in a composed manner, you would be regarded as acting white. Since when is whiteness? Since when is it synonymous with um, good behavior, with being on time, with speaking good English, with being good at math? I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. So if things are to change, then we have to be able to look at all those, acting white phenomenon and dismantle it and say this is human behavior. I mean, it also boils down to the fact of, say, crime, for example. I don't think it's a black thing. I don't think it's a racialized thing. I think it's a race thing. People of all races commit crime. So it shouldn't be something that is associated with a particular racialized group. It shouldn't be something that is associated primarily with a particular racialized group. But hey, that's what we see in the world. I mean, stereotypes exist, and these stereotypes, as I was saying, some of these stereotypes may stem from some level of truth. They may stem from some level of there may be some validity to it, but it doesn't really apply to everyone within a certain context. So it might not be true when we look at all these things. So that's why at times stereotypes they're not good. So Dr. Mason says also to act white is to have nice things and certain professions, etc., or to aspire to the American dream, etc. Racism is literally packaged as race. The irony, yeah. And the funny thing is, which is some of the things that Ada and myself are going to, some of the things that we're going to touch on today in this live stream, is that where we come from, we didn't see those things as a white man thing. I mean, we saw it as something that everybody should aspire to. Having nice things is something that everybody should aspire to. being good in school. There was no shortage of people around us that were professionals. There was no shortage of people around us who were doctors, who were pharmacists, who were lawyers, who were engineers, and all that. And these people then they inspired us to want to do great things. And it never occurred to me for once that the color of a person's skin would, in this age, be a significant limiting factor as regards to what happens to a person in terms of achievement in life and all that. And it wasn't until I started following a lot of Western media that I began to see all these things. I'm like, wow, in this century. I mean, I know slavery occurred. I know uh, Jim Crow and all that, all those terrible stuff. I know they occurred, but to claim that those things are still having a similar impact or effect that they had when they were so prevalent as now, it just blew my mind. I was like, I don't think this thing makes any sense, any sort of sense. But hey, that's the world we live in. And I think that a lot of this has to do with the media narrative. I mean, the media, they're out there to just sell what would get a rise out of people, what would get an emotional response from people. They're not ready to sell facts. They're not ready to. In fact, news should be boring. News should be very, very boring. It shouldn't be the case that. But what we see today is that news is not boring. News is sensationalized. News is There's a lot of drama to it when you look at certain headlines and you see the caption of the headline, and you begin to wonder that, okay, some people, if they do not read that headline, they may go off with an impression that is entirely different from what the story is telling itself. So the media has a very, very big role to play, or the media has played a very big role in this worsening racial relations, particularly in the US, and all that. But the funny thing is that even though we do not have such problems currently, it is not far away for these things to be imported down to Africa or to other parts of the world because of the influence of American culture, propagated by Hollywood. So it's very easy for these things to get transported to other parts of the world, and people will just parrot them. Take, for example, I never knew there was anything like a gender pay gap in my country. It's unheard of that men and women are paid. In fact, there's a salary structure. So when you look at that salary structure, you're paid based on your level, based on there's a salary structure, and take into it doesn't take into account the gender of the person or the sex of the person. You're in this particular level, then you're going to be earning the same thing as another person in that particular level, basically, except there are some other arrangements. So when I see those things, when I hear those things supposedly coming from the West, it beats my imagination, and I'm like, the West is supposed to be much more advanced than this, and we thought that these ideals are things that are already being upheld in the West. We thought that gender equality, uh, pay parity, we thought that freedom and expression, no discrimination in terms of race or any other thing. We thought that these things were things that were given. We thought that they were things that were natural in the West, and we aspire to those things as well. So now getting to interact with people from the West and see that there are those who claim that, oh, there's gender bias, there's racial bias, there's racism, and all those things, and claim that all those things have a significant impact in the outcome of people. It just blows my mind. It just makes me wonder, what's the truth to that? Are those things really true, or are they just being played? Yeah, Bo said that there isn't a gender gap problem in America either. So it's a narrative that has been spun. So if there's no gender gap, but what's the purpose of of bringing all these sort of divisions? What's the purpose of bringing all these sort of divisions? Because I don't see any positive end in sight for wanting to highlight that there is a gender pay gap when there is none. To just basically lie about the gender pay gap when there is no gender pay gap, or to lie that there's racism when there is no racism, or to lie that racism is significantly impacting your life as a black person. I think there was a study that was done. There was a poll that was done, and I must have seen that poll where black people were asked if they believed racism existed. Yes, they said racism existed, and they asked them, um, how would you describe the influence of racism in your own day-to-day life? And the majority of black people from that poll showed that racism was not a significant factor in their day-to-day life. So maybe all this is just the media doing its thing, trying to make a buck out of people, trying to make a buck out of divisions, trying to stoke racial tensions here and there, because if the news is boring, nobody's going to want to watch. But I think news should be boring. I think news should be really, really boring. But some people might want to tie this to a critique of capitalism and say that it's capitalism that's causing all this, that the desire to make money is what's making the media to do all these terrible things. And it breaks my heart that a place that has sort of a free press, independent of the government per se, are not taking advantage of that free press you know, to further the cause of the people. I mean, in Africa or in my country specifically, especially with this current government, the press is not free. There are certain things you can't say. There are certain things you can't do. There are certain things you can't say on the traditional media. They're just going to shut you down. And if they don't shut you down, the news station, the radio station, the television station, they're going to be in big trouble because the government is going to come after them. But come on, I've seen the way Western media talk about their presidents, talk about their politicians, and they look at the way the CNN and the likes, the way they talked about Donald Trump and all that. But there was never a time where I felt that there was never a time I felt that they were going to be in trouble for saying certain things about their president. So press is free, and instead of using that freedom to do something good, it's turned into something crazy. So before Ada comes in, Ada doesn't hasn't come in yet. Bo, I'd like you to come in. Let's talk. You can ask me some questions about blackness and racism and all that in Africa. Let me put the link here. Dr. Mason, you can come in as well. Um, let's I'm sure Ada will be here anytime soon. I really want to talk to her because she's a Nigerian who's lived in Nigeria and she's lived in the UK. So she has this experience of what it means to be black in the continent of Africa, and she has the experience of what it means to be black somewhere else in the world. And I think we should be able to juxtapose what those experiences are and see that, I mean, for us back here, we're all black, so there is no sense of racial discrimination. And yes, we understand that there are other races. I mean, from movies and all that, we know that there are white people, but everyone outside Africa is sort of white to us. So the Chinese are white, the Indians are white, everyone is white. So for us, what constitutes whiteness, I would say, isn't so much the skin color. It's a mixture of factors. It's a mixture of, okay, your skin color, your country of origin, and even how you speak, your accent, such that even a Nigerian that's lived in the US and the UK for a very long time, and they come back and they are sounding like a typical American or a typical Brit, they might be labeled as white. So it just throws away the assumption that whiteness or blackness has to do with a very fixed category of skin color. So yeah, Mason, Americana. Yeah, exactly, Americana. So that's what we use to refer to Nigerians who are staying in America. We call them Americana. And my best friend was around for last week. He lives in Germany. he works there. He's married and he's there now. But he came for his father's burial, and although is lighter than me, but being that he's been in Germany for a considerable amount of time, his skin definitely, because of the cooler weather, made him lighter and all that, and his accents and all that. So when we were in the marketplace, and both of us, and one of the women was referring to him as Oyibo, and that's the local term that we use for white people. Oyibo. That's the Nigerian term we use for white people. So even though clearly he's Nigerian, and even though clearly anybody can see that he's a black person, but yet for the fact that there's that connection between him and, say, Europe, he was referred to as, no, he's a white person. So, Bo, come in. Dr. Mason, come in. I don't know why that is not coming in yet. So that I don't just do a monologue. Let it not be just a monologue. I want to talk to people. I want to, take some interactions. Ben, or anyone else who wants to. Where's Chloe? Where's Stanley? Oh, my guys. All right, Bo is in. Okay. Can you hear me, Bo? All right, Bo. Welcome to the stream. How are you doing today? Okay. Jianju69 says I can tell you more about the African concept of whiteness. Okay. Like I said, whiteness is usually used to as refer to people who are outside the continent of Africa. So the Chinese will be considered white, even though we know that they are Asians. We're not. It's not like we don't know that they are from a different continent, and it's not like we don't know that they are different from the Europeans. The Indians will be considered as white. Um, African Americans will be considered as white, even though we know that they are Black Americans as well. So that's the sense in which we use the term whiteness. So it's not just to refer to a particular racialized group. It's more, okay, the West and other parts of the world. Bo came in and went out again. He can come back. Okay. All right, Bo. Welcome to the conversation. How are you doing today?
I'm all right, man. What's going on with you?
Oh, I can't hear you. Can you hear Bo?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay, speak again. I think it's my earpiece. Bo, just say something so I can judge if I can hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah, welcome.
I apologize.
No problem. So what's going on?
No, man, just tapping in, listening to you. A lot of the stuff, even outside of blackness, to the pay gap, the gender gap you was talking about,
Mm,
it's all politically manufactured. It's all about politics, really, to
mm,
energize a specific voter base. To vote in one direction at the end of the day. You know, I mean, is there data that can show that men make more than women? Sure. I won't debate that. But is there a reason for it? I believe so. If you look at it, men work longer hours in different industries, get different degrees that pay more, you know, less time off work for whatever reason. There's a whole lot of other data and variables that go into why there is a pay gap that isn't brought up, but they just use a blanket data set to just make it seem as if in some way that means that women are oppressed. Where it's just women are making different choices to go into different fields than men do. More men are engineers. Engineers make more. Simple stuff like that. But they'll use that to create a narrative to energize women to feel as though they're being oppressed. And now you should vote for this one particular party that's pushing that narrative. And that's just, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about
Even the way
as
they
it
come
relates to
about that.
America.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I'm saying specifically in America. I don't know how that translates to Africa, Nigeria,
Okay.
when you were speaking about
Okay.
it from a Nigerian's perspective. But I know the
Yeah.
conversation around the pay gap and there being a pay gap between men and women, that's the reason for it.
Yeah, and the way that they come about this pay gap, their calculations, it doesn't make any sense to me because it's just averages. You sum up all the wages of men and you sum up all the wages of women, irrespective of their 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 levels, irrespective of their professions, irrespective of so many factors that can influence how much someone is earning. Then you just take the average and you say, on average, men earn this more than women, so there's a pay gap. It doesn't make sense. That's a bad interpretation of data. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And to the point that women make different choices, I just want to highlight one example from my own personal experience. I'm a pharmacist, and in my country, when you graduate from pharmacy school, just like the medical doctors, you go to the hospital. You're posted to the hospital for 1 year, where you try to get some hands-on clinical experience called our internship program. So while I was doing my internship, there are times I would have to be, or the interns would have to be on call at night. So you have to walk through the night. Now, what I noticed was that many of the female interns did not want to work at night. So what they did was that they paid us, the male interns, to take their spots at night. So by that alone, they're making different choices. If there was a supposed bonus that was attached um, to the night shift, there was a supposed bonus that was attached to the night shift. Just by them making that choice of not wanting to work at night, they're going to lose out of that bonus. In fact, they lost out of that bonus because they had to pay us to take their calls for them. So at the end of the day, if you calculate their salary minus the amount of money that they paid us, the guys, to run their calls for them at night, you see that they're earning less. But they're actually not earning less because we're all paid the same thing. So someone will look at that without context and say, there is discrimination here, that the women are being paid less than the men, when you do not take into consideration the factor that I just brought into the equation, which is some women don't want to work at night. So Ada is here now. Yep. Hi, Ada.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah,
Hello, I
perfect.
do apologize about that. I just had a few issues. I wasn't
Okay.
even going to make it tonight, but I thought let me just try and just because I promised I'll be here, so just come even if it's for a moment. So I do sincerely apologize for the delay.
Oh, that's fine. But just thank you for coming. So we'll try to make this very brief so that you can go do other things. So, but before we start, cake me.
Oh, I don't fully speak it, but I understand.
Okay.
Don't
So
roll
so
your eyes.
so
Don't
so
roll
so
your
re-
eyes
respond to
at
me.
me.
Respond to me.
I don't
respond
think
to.
I can. I don't think I can. Sorry, Mama, if you're watching. Sorry.
Uh, okay, don't worry. Those are just the few Igbo words that I can speak because I did
You're
my
not
youth
Igbo?
service in Enugu. No, no, I'm not Igbo.
Ah.
I'm not Igbo.
Oh, okay. I didn't
Yeah.
um catch your last name fully because usually I know sort of more or less if it's Igbo, Delta. But yeah, my background is Enugu, so that's quite cool.
Oh,
Yeah.
Enugu. Where
Yeah.
in Enugu?
My dad, I don't know exactly, but my dad was born there. Our village is Item as
Okay.
well. Yeah, if you know there.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. So I did my national youth service in Enugu. So that was where I picked up the few Igbo words that I can throw around here and there. And it was fun. It was nice being in Enugu.
Well, you know
It's
more
good
than me, I
meeting
think.
yeah, yeah, yeah. At least for now. So
Mhm.
Ada, welcome to this conversation.
Thank
So
you for
just
having
do
me.
us the honor of introducing yourself to my audience and we'll just go from there.
Okay, so thank you so much for your patience and also for inviting me on. I watched a few of your episodes as well, and it's really great what you're thinking, what you're doing, and even your name, critical thinkers, is just something that just drew me to you as well because that's the way I like to approach life and the way I like to approach sensitive topics. I deal primarily with racial relations, current events, things that are happening right now in the Western world when it comes to disparities, when it comes to Black people, white people, and so on, and just the current narratives that we're all hearing about race. I started doing what I'm doing on the back of the recent, well, it's not so recent anymore, but the George Floyd incidents and the saga following that. And I just felt that there was this one-sided narrative about racism and quote unquote oppression in the UK. I can speak of the UK and just seeing some things that were happening in the US and the way some Black people felt and thought, whether it be on the back of things that they learned or things they know, but they think they know about history, especially their history pertaining to slavery. I just felt that there was some things not adding up. There were a few gaps in the narrative, and that's why I just thought I would explore that. So I write, I share my views and my opinions on podcasts and on YouTube, like yourself, and mainly on Instagram and Twitter. So yes, that's me in a very nutshell, very small nutshell.
Wow. That's good. The first time I came across your content was um, one of us Discord channel. We have a Discord channel. Bo is part of that Discord channel too. And then he he put a link to your article. What does it mean to be a black girl? What it means to be a black girl, which is sort of an inspiration for this live stream we're having today. And when I was reading it, I was just smiling. I was like, yes, 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 yes. She's hitting it.
Wow.
She's getting every point. I mean, it was like seeing myself thinking in another person, you understand? And in a way, I sort of see this as a common Nigerians. I don't know, maybe it's because of where we're coming from. I mean, many Nigerians, there are more of people who think like us in Nigeria and people who think the other way. You understand? As regards
Yes.
race relations and all that. So maybe it's just something that has to do with our experiences. Probably we do not have the African American experience. You get so, but however, okay, go ahead. You wanted to say something. Go.
No, no, please continue.
Okay. So to my first question, because you
Mhm.
have experience of living in the continent of Africa, you have experience of living in Europe, so which is in the Western world. When you hear the word black, what comes to your mind uh, as it relates to race? What comes to your mind? Just oppose that position with what you thought of what you thought being black was when you were in Africa, and what black meant when you went to the Western world.
Yeah, so in Africa, it didn't mean anything at all, which is to me anyway, which is something that I wrote in the article. I sort of spent my first years in Nigeria, so I don't know how I would have been if, let's say, I spent my teenage years. I don't know if that the answer to that question would have been different, but certainly, during my childhood years, the black never really came up. It wasn't a way that you described people. It wasn't a way that you said, that you tried to sort of ascribe identity to people. It wasn't, right? And funnily enough, even when I came to the UK, I say this all the time. I for a while I wasn't seen as a black girl. I was seen as the African. I was seen as an African. But I feel like this term black is more popular, more common now, just in terms of trying to instill ideologies into people, right? So, because what does being black mean? If it's just pertaining to skin color, then I share the same sort of skin color with some people, let's say from India. If there's some people in India with who are even darker than myself, but yeah, they're not black. So it can't be in relation to the skin color. So then is it culture? Well, then what culture? Where does the line stop? So for me now, black is more definitely, especially during the time that I've been sort of doing this work, blackness to me more is like this subculture, this ideology, because there's been many times in the last year where I've been told that I'm not black enough, or I am not an authentic black girl because I don't have this viewpoint that racism is, the full stop, or racism is the main and only reason. If we talk about why a black person is not doing well socially and economically, then it's because of racism. Because I don't have this viewpoint, my blackness has been questioned. And you mentioned, we're talking about Nigeria a few times. Many people in the US, I feel, and definitely in the UK, they see Nigerians as sort of the sellouts that um, that were accomplices with the white man. So already we have this kind of barrier anyway when it comes to offering our viewpoints, in terms of how black people can fare better and so on and so forth. We're not appreciated as much because we colluded, apparently, right? So blackness today is just, it's quite a touchy thing. I feel, me personally, it does not mean much. It hasn't been the determinant of what I have today or what I don't have today. My actions, my beliefs, my choices have a greater bearing to who I am today than the color of this skin. So to me personally, it means absolutely nothing. Whether someone describes me as a black girl or not, it doesn't mean anything. When people say I'm not a real black girl, it doesn't mean anything at all as well. So, but saying that can really offend someone who have made their blackness sort of the benchmark of who they are. What I've said now, that my blackness doesn't mean anything, can actually hurt someone else, which is for me quite sad, because I don't think anything arbitrary to you should be able to be so, you know, such a great mark on you that touching upon it means that they're touching who you are. It's like making fun of my height, or making fun of my eyes, or making fun of, it's the same as what people think in relation to my blackness.
Yeah. So this draws very closely to. I listened to the conversation you had with. I think there were five other black people on that
Yes.
podcast with you, and one of the ladies, an African American, said something that she moved to Ivory Coast to meet
Yes.
the father of a baby, of her child, and
Mm-hmm.
and she was so distraught when the Ivorians were telling her that she wasn't
She's
black.
not black.
I mean, she had built her identity around the fact that she's black, but they told her that you're American, you are not black, and she was having a meltdown over it. And I was like, yes, yes, yes. This is the way we think in Nigeria too, because even you yourself, you might be referred to as a white lady because somehow you're in the UK, you speak with a British accent, you understand.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it had nothing to do with skin color. It was more where you came from, was more your place of origin, or where you're currently domiciled in, you understand. So in that
Exactly.
sense, the context of blackness doesn't mean anything to us, and we do not see it as a determining factor in what happens to anybody. I mean, uh, we've always looked at the West as, okay, this is the land of opportunities, and people want to go there because they felt that the opportunities there, there's freedom there, and we never for once thought that black skin can be a limiting factor. So at times when African Americans look at Nigerians and like why, like you said, like we are the sellouts, but we are looking at like, you are here, why are you not taking advantage of the opportunities? You're complaining, I mean, why?
Exactly.
So there is that disconnect. But my follow-up question would be this: you said something about this being, when you first got to the UK, you were referred to just that African girl, and something must have changed along the line, and I think it's something that is quite recent. That there was that shift to an emphasis on blackness. What do you think what do you think happened within the space of a few years? Because I don't think this conversation was happening, say, 20, 30, 50 years ago.
It wasn't, but I was having a conversation. I wasn't having it publicly, but my friends and no more friends, not really family, have always had this mindset and viewpoint about blackness and what blackness is. So indirectly, it's a great question. I've never thought about it, but I feel like I subconsciously accepted this identity of blackness because I was so I'm smiling because I'm sort of kind of self-evaluating, and I've never had to before. But I think I took on the blackness because I wanted to show people that actually what they think blackness is isn't what they think it is. So in other words, everyone around me who was carrying this um overt identity marker of blackness, they all had a certain way of being, of thinking. And I'm not talking just about stereotypes. I know that's the first thing that may come to many people's minds, but just the mental kind of the perspective and the outlook they had in life. Even I had previous relationships with black men, and it was the same kind of stories and narratives about the white man, and I was like, this can't be what being black is. So I sort of took it on. Obviously, I have the kind of different mindset that I had today because I wanted to show people, whoever I came across, that blackness can mean a different thing. Blackness can mean something really strong, really positive, really sort of forward looking, and not always searching for why or how a negative result means that some kind of racial element is present, because I don't see life in a racial lens. I just don't. If you're a white person, for argument's sake, and I don't know the skin color of, I believe, Botep, but if he's white and I'm in this space with you, I don't see myself as the black girl, or I don't see this. I just see that I'm in a room having a conversation. But some people always need that racial divide, and I guess that's why I'm so determined. I was speaking with Dr. Sheena yesterday, and of course, you know her, you spoke to her. I saw your conversation with her, and she believes in a theory of racelessness. And I love her theory, and I think that is the ultimate goal. But until we get to that goal, we need to take on this identity of blackness and show people how different, or how different this can be. So I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, yeah. I also wanted to relate it to when you look at the way the narrative is being pushed right now. I think there's some sort of manufactured hysteria around it. One of your guests also mentioned something about Roots, how there was a certain time Roots was always on the TV, and it sort of just traumatized them, and towards white people. Even though I was in Africa, that thing happened to me too. Now let me give you the story.
Yes, really.
I read, yeah, it
Um,
did, it did. I my grandfather had three kids also with a British white woman. So they were in
yes,
Nigeria, but I was very small when they left again. And
yes.
my aunt had a lot of books, and one of the books in her collections was Roots. And I read Roots when I was about 11 or 12 years old, and I was so
Okay.
traumatized by it. I mean, the gory details that Roots presented that black people went
Yes.
through, it just made me so mad at the white man that even though there was no evidence for that in my life within the continent of Africa, I was so mad that for a very long time, my greatest fantasy was to see white people go through the things that
Hmm.
they made black people go through. You get it? Now
Yes.
that happened to me from just reading a book in Africa. Imagine being in America, and you're being inundated with these messages every time from the media, from peers, from every angle. You're being inundated with this message that white man bad, white man bad, white man bad. In that sense, isn't doesn't it make sense that the African Americans are feeling this way?
Yes, for sure. It's reiterated any chance they get. I when I was speaking to Dr. Sheena yesterday, I mentioned about the video of Sandra Bullock, which is a celebrity, right? The actress, and she's a white woman, and she adopted a black son, and this boy is 6 years old. He's freaking 6 years old. And he put on a hoodie, and she sat this boy down, and she's telling him why it's a problem. Sorry, every time I retell this story, I laugh because it's so painful for me to repeat it. But she's telling him that he will be people will be afraid of him. Her words, her words. They'll be afraid of him because he's a black boy, and they won't be afraid of him like sorry, they won't be afraid of the white boy like they will be afraid of him, right? So this is called the talk. People in the UK have it as well, right? They have it a lot more in America, which is where parents sit their black children down, usually black boys, but it's black children, and they tell them about the ills of society and how the world and society is anti-black. And it usually focuses on policing in America, right? And how you know in effect in essence young black boys are at risk of getting killed by the police just by leaving the house. But what annoyed me about this case of Sandra Bullock is that she didn't just specify to policing, she actually said people will be afraid of you. People will be afraid of you because you're a black boy, because you didn't get the good roll of the dice of having white skin. I'm not paraphrasing, you can look this up. This is her words she said to a young 6-year-old child. And I say, and I've said it before, and I'll say it as much as I can, this talk is what is killing our young black men in the UK, in the US, because this is what is embedding in them a toxic, poisonous, false lie. So, of course, if you think that people are afraid of you because of something so unchangeable, something that wasn't your control or your fault, like your skin color, then you have every reason to be defensive, to be hateful, to be on edge, to be awkward. You have every reason to be. And if people want to talk about getting justice and so on, this is a great injustice to tell a child this, right? The world, we have to understand that there are evil people in the world. Yes, there are racists in the world. Of course, there are. I have experienced racism myself. But as the UK footballer John Barnes said, I may have experienced racism, but I don't, and I have never suffered from racism. I live better than a large chunk of English people in this country. And I'm not saying that to try and be boastful. I'm saying that to open the minds of people, especially people that say it doesn't matter what you have or what you've achieved, you are still oppressed if you're a Black woman in the UK or the US. So, yes, I understand horrific, barbaric. I've read the accounts. No one can read the accounts or watch the movies and sort of not feel a certain way about some things that have gone on in history. There have been ugly things in the past, but it, ugly things haven't only happened to Black people. Suffering isn't only unique to Black people. And if anyone knows history, they know this very well. If you look at all the dictators throughout time, dictators that oppress their own people, right? White oppressing white, Black oppressing Black, you will know that oppression and suffering and pain is not unique or copyrighted to Black people. So we need to have this, you know, more balanced way of seeing life. And like I said before, this doesn't mean that you then excuse or it justifies anything that has happened from the European side and the American side, but it just brings a bit of perspective to the table, in my opinion.
Yeah. Um, Now, this Bo, I'll let you ask her a question now. Let me just get this one in. This brings me to something you wrote in your posts. What it means to be a black girl. You said growing up, you were surrounded by by people who were pretty much successful, family members, extended family members, doctors, lawyers, pharmacists, and all that. And they instilled in you the drive to want to be successful. And they wouldn't take there was no they made no excuse whatsoever for failure. And they they always found a way to make things work. They understood that there were going to be challenges. They always found a way to make things work. And I would say that that's a similar experience that I got, and that's a similar experience many Nigerians get. Even if their immediate families are not that well, they are at least extended family members. There are people who are successful around them, and there are people who are going to instill in them values that, well, there is no excuse for failure. You get now. How do you juxtapose that with going to the UK and getting to the UK? You might see the racism thing as just another obstacle for you to surmount, and it's not going to stop you. It's
Well,
it's part of the life, you understand. But the African Americans may not see it that way. So
yeah.
how do you make sense of that?
Again, it's the root, right? It's the upbringing, and that's I'm laughing because that is the core of everything I am now. Racism is there, but it's just an obstacle. I wouldn't even count it in my own life, right? I can't speak about someone else, but I wouldn't count it as the top 10 obstacles that I've had to face when, trying to achieve things. I would not count racism as the top 10. In this country, I've been told more by Black people of the things I wasn't able to do than anyone that was white. You know, the opportunities that I've been able to get were from white people, and not to stereotype, but my own experience was that there were some occasions where even, let's say, my own people, it was difficult, right? So if I have this mentality that, okay, I only need to do things the Black way in terms of only liaising with Black people because that's the right thing to do, right? That's what BLM is preaching, you know, boycott white companies, don't shop at white companies, let's make a Black Christmas. That's an initiative BLM is doing now. So if I have this mentality, I only want to work with Black people, then I might be in trouble, because it's not that Black people are bad or good, is that Black people are humans. We're all humans. And we have to see that we opportunities come from anywhere and everywhere. And people aren't just going to help you because you share the same skin color as them. They will help you because you share the same values, culture. Culture is fine. That's why maybe even South Asian people will help someone from South Asia. Chinese might help Chinese. Nigerian might help Nigerian, even though us Nigerians need to be better. But We do.
I
But
understand.
but where some what I'm saying all that to say that sometimes where people think things are racial, things are more cultural, things people want to advance and help their own group and rather than their whole entire race, contrary to what many people think. Many people will look in my face and say, well, the white people want to advance the white race. I don't think so, because I know people, let's say for argument's sake, from Poland, and I know another one from Germany. They're both white and they don't really care about advancing each other's interest, if that makes sense. So I think, yes. What was your question again? How
Oh,
do I
my question was, trying to
I'm
make
trying
sense of, my question was, trying to reconcile how you would approach the challenge of racism versus how someone
Yes,
from America
apologies.
would
Y-
approach it.
Yes, because I don't see racism as me being on having the lower hand and someone else having upper hand. I don't. If someone is racist to me, let's say, and there's two kinds of racism, right? There's the systemic one that people talk about, then you have the interpersonal one. So systemic, let's say I didn't get a job because someone saw that my name is Ada. That's not an English name, so we're not going to give her the job. And then you have interpersonal racism, like that's where your microaggressions come in. That's where are you really from, or is that your real hair, these kind of interpersonal day-to-day kind of racism. So the day-to-day one, that doesn't affect me because I'm confident and I'm sure anyway of who I am. So if anyone, and plus we have to be careful when we talk about interpersonal racism and microaggressions, because for example, it's been said that asking someone where they're from is racist, right? And in my opinion, I don't think that's racist, because call it a good habit or bad habit, but I like to ask people where they're from
We
because
do that. We do that all the time in Nigeria. I mean, where are you
right,
from? Even within the country, we do that all the time. So
exactly, and I like to do that because I'm just culturally curious. I love culture. So when I ask, I'm not meaning anything by it. And also when you ask me, I don't see that you mean anything by it, because actually I'm so happy to tell you where I'm from. I'm so happy to tell you that I'm a Nigerian girl. I'm so happy to tell you about my journey and my story, right? I'm not hiding anything, so you can ask me, right? So interpersonal relationship, racism, never affects me anyway. But let's say something like systemic. I didn't get a job because I'm black. How do I know that? That's my first question. Why am
exactly.
I why how am I sure? Okay. So then I calculate, well, the interviewer was white. Okay. So are there other black people in the company? Right? Because then if there aren't, okay, then let's go further. Then if I really get to the root that actually a race could have been an element of it, then I deal with it. I deal with that, Charles. I don't write a letter to the BBC and talk about systemic racism, because that doesn't do anything. I deal with that company in that moment, in that instance, to solve that problem. But if I don't have any proof, and the only proof is that I just didn't get the job, then that's why people are falling into the same trap of thinking that things are happening to them because of racism. And it's nothing to do with racism. It could have been due to the way they prepared, or just the fact that 300 people applied for the job and there was just someone more qualified than them, or someone, because sometimes you can be qualified for the job but maybe you didn't fit, let's say, the culture of what they wanted. I don't know, there's so many dynamics to it apart from racism, and I feel people don't explore that, whereas I do. So
Good. Great one. So, Bo is an African American, and he agrees a lot with what we're saying, and he seemed to know a lot about Nigeria too. So I'll just let him ask you some questions. So, Bo, go ahead.
Well, I have surface level knowledge of Nigeria. But nah, I listened to the interview the discussion between you and Sheena Mason,
Mm-hmm.
and it's somewhat refreshing, right? Because I don't agree with everything, right, from the perspective of how you see blackness, right? Because I believe it's a lot of nuances to that discussion, right? And so, which is why I support the concept of racistness so much, because it makes it where we can we can put everything in context as to the problems and the issues that we're addressing, right? Because when we address it from the perspective of just a flat blackness, it becomes a distraction at that point and it muddies the water, right? Because a lot of times when we're talking about race, when you hear race, what we're actually talking about is culture or ethnicity and our different experiences, right? So just as you mentioned in America, right, black is almost used interchangeably with African American culture a lot of times, right? That's why the issue becomes people feel as though African Americans try to present themselves as the gatekeepers of blackness, right? But the problem is that our culture and our history and our lineage is so intertwined with blackness, with being black, simply because even the concept of blackness is a Western construct that came from the West, that originated in the West for the most part, dividing us between black and white. So it makes it harder to actually have certain conversations and you get brought into it. Much in the same way how you said if she was to go to Nigeria, they wouldn't consider her black. She may be considered an Oyinbo as well, because in Nigeria, the concept of blackness or whatever it is intertwined in the cultures over there. So if culturally people don't identify with you, they're gonna somewhat other you. It's like how the concept of an Oreo, how you hear in the West, the concept of an Oreo. So I believe until we can get to a point where we can start putting these things in context and not just this blanket assumption of what it means to be black, and really break it down as to what it means to each group, then there'll always be confusion. But I believe that that's the plan, though. I believe that that's the tool that they use to keep us confused and somewhat divided and in a state of opposition, even amongst ourselves, where we're all fighting within the group to say who is and who isn't black. You know what I mean? What?
For sure.
Mm.
I think just very quickly, I think you will have a different um idea of what it means to be black than myself, because you're in the United States and I'm in the United Kingdom. So, and I think that is the point. I don't think that there should be a unified, not that I don't think, but I don't think it's reasonable to expect that there will be a unified understanding of what it means to be black. And I'll give another example. If I asked two Americans what it meant to be an American, sometimes I don't think I'll get the same answer. If you asked both myself and Charles what it meant to be Nigerian, I don't know if you will get the exact same answer. And that's similar to when it comes to things like blackness. And the reason that is because we are all different, right? But that shouldn't be a bad thing. But at the moment, it is a bad thing. And there's this search, this sort of desperate attempt to make, like you said, I think we're agreeing somewhat in different ways. There's this desperation to make blackness a certain thing, and it will never happen, in my opinion. I mean, I can't talk about the USA, you are there, but when this George Floyd thing happened, there was a push for solidarity for Black people, and in fact, all people, but more all Black people all over the world. So what happened is that we were brought into the conversation, right? Black people all over the world were brought into the conversation. BLM, for example, has a chapter in the UK. We were brought into the conversation. Then when it was found out that actually they don't fit our ideology, our cultural concepts, then that's when people started to be excluded bit by bit. Actually, you don't fit the constructs of blackness, you're not black, and so on and so forth. So instead of trying to make this unified understanding of what blackness is, why don't we go back to cultural aspects? Because I think that's more, you will get more of a deeper understanding of why certain groups and demographics, for example, are the way they are. Like, for example, in the UK, if you have black as the umbrella, but there's Caribbean, there's Nigerian, there's, you know, Black Britons, and we all fare different in the economical scale. So if you have this blanket of blackness, someone is going to lose. Someone is going to lose because you're going to be taking the average figures instead of understanding specifics and specific intragroup dynamics in each demographic group. So I agree, but I don't agree in terms of this unified concept that we need to have when it comes to being black. That will never happen, in my opinion, and that shouldn't happen
And
because that's not so important.
yeah, I don't agree that it happened either. But using Black Lives Matter, right, as an example, because I noticed in the UK, I did see a lot of people being swept into that. But you also have to understand that the conversation around Black Lives Matter that you witnessed from the UK is not the same conversation that took place on the ground amongst African Americans, right?
Yes, for
Because
sure, for sure.
if you look at even the hierarchy of Black Lives Matter, they're not even representative of what we would, as African Americans, consider black. The leadership of Black Lives Matter, a lot of the figureheads that you've seen were actually of non-African American descent. They were of Nigerian descent, coincidentally. You know what I mean? So that goes to show the manipulation that they use to create this false image of what it means to be black
Exactly.
as a tool of manipulation to manipulate us all into thinking we have to fall into this when it's not even representative of our everyday lives and
For
how we
sure.
even see ourselves.
I'm glad you said that because that's the whole point of any conversation we have. There isn't one narrative, there isn't one way. Not every black man feels afraid of the police. Some do, rightly or wrongly so. It doesn't matter. Some do. But to make this an overarching narrative of every black man or every black woman feeling tired at work or every black woman feeling that she's tired of having to be professional in white settings, we not every black person thinks the same because we are all human individual beings. And like you mentioned, trying to lump us all together is a way of actual division, not unity, because you lump us all together because you want to pit us against another group, you know. So it's, I know we're not, we the main topic wasn't really about BLM, but I just thought I wanted to mention them because they are unfortunately driving the conversation when it comes to blackness that many are unfortunately falling for, you know. That's the reality.
One
Yeah.
last thing before I pass it to Charles, though, right?
Okay.
Also, this concept of blackness as being kind of like molded in somewhat through the lens of white supremacy or in opposition of white people in and of itself is a distraction, right? Because what you see is like my blackness isn't based upon how I interact with white people. Because unlike in the UK, the dynamic in America is somewhat different too. Because unlike in the UK, a lot of black people, African Americans, we already live in a world which is somewhat self-segregated. Even if you look at our schools and how we live, like we don't even live our everyday lives around white people for it to even be an issue, right? So to grab your whole concept of who you are based on another group in and of itself is somewhat keeping you beholden to that old system, which they created during colonialism, where your identity and individuality means nothing, right? The only thing that matters is you're not white. So you drink from this water fountain or you go through this door in the back. You know what I mean? So I say that to say this because blackness, you can be right. And there's many people in America who don't think like that. I would say the majority of them don't think like that. And it's almost white people are almost non-existent in a lot of our lives, right? So what you see is, okay, you may hate white people, right? But that doesn't make you pro-black because you don't like white people. Because once you put us back around each other, we don't even like ourselves, and there's infighting and everything else going on. So if you're not, so it's kind of like it means nothing. Just because you hate white people or you don't get along with white people, or if white people is at the root of your identity, then you're still losing. You're still lost. If you don't get to a point where you can build up yourself within, or you love who you are just for being who you are, just because of the culture and the lineage, the slavery or whatever. Like slavery doesn't have to be seen as something that just evoke hatred out of towards white people. You know, there's a lot of black people that view that lineage of slavery as like something that they overcame, you know what I'm saying? As a sense of pride, like, man, my people endured slavery and we come from that. The people who established America and built America, and we're survivors, and we, you know, and we've proven ourselves as what we've done and who we are, you know what I mean? And our lineage as slaves is so tied into the history of America, whereas we have just as much ownership over America as any white person do. And we don't even hate them. And they know our history and we know theirs, and we're American.
Yep.
Yeah. So, Ada, I know you're pressed for time. So,
Yes.
let me just ask you one final question so that we'll wrap
Mhm.
up for today. And I would really love to have you back because I have a ton of questions that I need to ask you, but
For
because of
sure.
time,
I'll be more organized, I promise.
oh, no problem. So, my last question is, in your article, you said that you were bullied for being black, and surprisingly, by a black boy. Do you want to share that with us?
Yeah, so like Botep said, the problem is not a group of people, because if you have this utopic result where, let's say for argument's sake, there's no racism and there's no white person bothering you, then do you think that within your own group it's going to be, a harmonious, gathering of people loving each other? No, we are human beings. We find something we don't like about someone else and we pick on that and we make their lives miserable. So I've always been strong minded. I've always been a confident person from Nigeria to here, and I've never been bullied in my whole life. I've only been bullied once, and that was by a black boy, and that was because of my skin color. And I know that because he would call us blick, and blick is slang, not anymore, but when I was in school, blick means really dark, really black. So he would call me and my brothers Blick, First, it just started off as words and then it became physical, He will see us in the school corridors and he'll push us, When we were outside after school, he'll throw stones at us and call us these derogatory racial slurs, right? And it was so confusing. It was freaking confusing because he was the only one that did it. Sometimes with, like, because the school I went to, it was more South Asian people and black people than whites, but South Asian were the majority. And his friends were South Asian, so from Pakistan, from India, and so on. And he would say these things while surrounded by people who weren't black. And then sometimes he would say it with people who were black, and there was this confused look on their faces of, what the hell is happening? Why is he making fun of this girl's skin color? And he has exactly the same skin color as me. But I am more than grateful with all my life that this happened to me, because this helps me think the way I do today. You know, Boltep is talking a lot about many black people, or this feeling of hatred for white people, and this feeling is real, right? I always say to people, you know, we can't have this narrative where there's hatred against white people, and the same people would say, no, it's not about hatred for white people, it's just about empowering black people. And I say, no, there is a horrible undercurrent movement going on where there is a hatred for this group. And if you heard recently the Twitter space of apparently black people calling for the genocide of white people, right? These things are happening as a joke, you know, like it's nothing. So when people try to say to me that my problem is a system run by white people and white supremacy, I say that wasn't what I was experiencing when I was 12 years old in my secondary school. The only person that was making my life a living hell to the point I didn't want to go to school was someone who looked exactly like me. So I don't buy it. So yes, it's something that will forever mark me, I think. And of course, that was the only time I was, you know, bullied like that. But there have been other times where I've been let down by people with the same skin color as me. And again, that doesn't mean that they are bad people. It just means that they're human. I've been let down by people who are white, people who are Asian, people who are black. It doesn't matter. But once there's a negative run-in with a white person with some black people, that's enough for them to make this overarching generalization that white people are the issue, when that's not true, right? So yeah.
Wow, that's a really really interesting story. Thank you for sharing that with us. So, Bo, do you have any further questions about that for now before we wrap it up for today?
Um, I'll save them for part two, right? Because I wanted because I know we pressed for time. She's pressed for time though. But now I would just like to explore the whole concept of blackness more so from the dynamic between our different cultures, right? Like, and as it relates to our different cultures and how we interact with each other in the West, in the UK, you know, the issues we face in the West that makes it different. Because everything that affects me as an African American, right, in my community and the plight we go through doesn't necessarily affect you as a Nigerian woman immigrating to the US. And I think when we just break it down to just this flat blackness and everybody's black, we miss the opportunity to actually address our individual issues. So the next time you come on, I wanted to go into that and have that discussion, because some people, and it's sad and it's frustrating because some people just, the notion of even saying that as though we're all not the same, we all don't have the same issue, can evoke some irrational emotions. Let's just say that, you know, where it's almost like a sense of people are delusional as to each other's everyday realities. So I just wanted to we could say that for part two. I don't know if you're going to continue this discussion on your channel or how it works, but I like to get your opinion on that stuff the next time. But I did agree with pretty much majority of everything you said, even though we may say it in different ways and see it from a different perspective. But yeah, I look forward to the next time we're able to talk and hear more about how you think.
For sure. Thank you. I think that's a very good topic to explore, because it's not explored enough. You know, we're three different people, I presume, in three different countries. Are you in Nigeria, Charles, or
Yeah, in
London?
Nigeria.
Yeah,
In
I
Nigeria.
Botep, I believe, is in America, in the USA, and I'm in the UK.
Yes.
We're all, I
Yes.
presume, black, but we are
Yes.
all different. And you, like you said, you face struggles. I'll not necessarily understand. I can understand, but maybe not relate to. But also, I face different struggles as a Nigerian woman that wasn't born in this country, different to yourself. And Charles, where he is, right? I would love to explore that as well, where you are, Charles, in a Black majority country, right? The minority there, the big minority there is white people, 0.1%, I believe. Yet you face problems, you know, issues, or people in Nigeria face issues. So, what is the issue, right? What is our problem? So it's a good one
Problem
to
is being
explore.
human.
Yes, it's this curse and blessing called life. More a
So,
blessing.
yeah, yeah. So, Ada, thank you very much. It was a pleasure having you. Your
Thank you.
conversations were very, very insightful and engaging, and would love to have you again. So, if you want to do it on your channel, we could come over to your channel and do
No,
this
I'm fine to do it here
discussion.
again. It was a
Okay.
lot of
So,
fun. I'm fine to talk
yeah.
to you on your channel.
Yeah, so we'll keep in touch. So have a great day. Thank you, thank you, thank you very much for coming.
Thank
And
you.
we'll see you
Take
in
care,
another live
Botep.
stream.
See you,
You
Charles.
too. You too.
Speak
Until the
soon.
next time.
Yes. Bye.
Bye. Yeah, so we're done with Ada for now. Let's
You
just
know,
maybe we'll just wrap up within the next 4 minutes. So, Bo, what do you think?
man, I think it's refreshing, and I feel like it's time that people are having these conversations, especially from pretty much the three major different perspectives in these top conversations. Because when the topic of blackness comes around, like pretty much three groups that's gonna somewhat dominate the conversation. That's the Caribbean, Africa, and Nigerian being representative of that, America in the UK. You know what I mean? So, and everybody has their own experiences and own perspectives, right? And everybody is watching each other's experiences and perspectives. And a lot of time we look at from the outside and we feel as though we somewhat know what's going on. And not just that, but there's also, we have this sense of entitlement because we're black, that I can speak on your everyday reality of what's going on in Nigeria, almost from a authoritative point of, not authoritative, but as though I even know, as though I can debate you, when really what I should be doing is sitting back, asking and learning. You know what I mean? Because what you see in the media is not the everyday realities on the ground. White supremacy may not have any bearings on your everyday reality. Not to say like the historical context and Frederick Lugard and everything else and colonialism, we get that, we understand that. But as far as what affects your everyday life, what you think, what you're concerned about as it relates to your family's future and your everyday motivation for living and what you're struggling with, like I don't think we know enough about that, about each other. You know what I mean? But sometimes we feel entitled to speak about it and we think we know. You know what I mean? So I think it's time where we can have a conversation where each group can be somewhat representative, or and different people within the group, because I'm sure there's people from your country who it's not just your experiences isn't theirs, but instead of trying to debate or tell each other, you know, what's the problem? Like, you can't tell me what's the problem affecting the ghettos of America. You know what I mean? We can exchange ideas, and you can ask and you can build upon what I tell you. And I can't tell you how to rebuild Nigeria. You know what I mean? I have no idea. You know what I mean? So I would need you to give me that blueprint, and where I can even start to even give you ideas or exchange ideas with you. But if we don't have a solid foundation is from the ground level, as far as the issues that affecting everyday people, then a lot of these conversations become not only pointless but counterproductive, and it builds up more resentment than anything. And I think that's why a lot of times as black people we fight it, we find ourselves in these diaspora wars and fighting amongst each other, because each group is trying to speak on behalf of the next group, and sometimes it becomes almost insulting. You know what I mean? And we take offense to it, and we become defensive now of our own group, because we feel as though, like, hold on, you have no. So yeah, it's just this whole that, and that's why the raceless theory is so needed, where we have to just stop, because not only as it relates to white people, but it creates this entitlement amongst ourselves that leads to resentment amongst each other. Well, now just because I'm black and you black, you think you can just come into my country and do what you want to do. And I've been here the whole time, and it's like you don't care because you black, you're entitled to do what you please when you come here. So the respect level that should be there is somewhat looked over. So yeah, I look forward to continue this conversation with her and other people, you know what I mean, to come in.
Yeah, yeah. So that's good. That's fine because the thing is, this plays back to that conversation we're having in the other Discord, the Discord Tashi's Discord channel, where what's his name? Forgotten his name. Where he was pushing for a one Africa, trying to remember that thing he was pushing for, and he he was almost saying whether or not Africans want it, there was going to be a pan Africanism. Whether or not Africans want it, there's going to be Pan Africanism. I was like, no, you don't. You can't impose that on the continent of Africa. If the peoples of Africa do not want that thing, then you coming from outside, even though you're black, you're coming from the UK, doesn't mean that you understand what the unique challenges of those of us in Africa are. So you can't just come and impose that. It's the same thing I see with the African American struggle, because when you look at say take affirmative action, for example, that are supposed to benefit black African Americans descended from slaves, but it's open to any black person. And to me, I think that's a great miscarriage of justice, because if it was designed to specifically cater for the needs of people who were disadvantaged because of their history, then someone who didn't have that history just coming from another country just because they share the same skin color, now being a beneficiary of it or even edging the others out, it's a problem. It's a problem because they don't have the same histories. So why should they take part in that? But because of this blanket blackness being applied, because of the blanket blankness being applied, then you can see that such groups can come in and even dominate where they're not supposed to even benefit in the first place. So it was
Right.
a great
And
conversation. Yeah,
just
go ahead.
just to end with this, right? And this may be controversial for some people in your audience, though, right?
Mm.
But I feel as though in 2021 and for so long, this Pan African ideology has done more damage than white supremacy to the psyche of at least Black Americans. You know what I'm saying? Because what it does, it created this not only this false narrative that doesn't exist, and created a bunch of delusional people with entitlement issues. Is also not really, let alone it not being feasible, it's not even productive. You know what I mean? It's like we find ourselves looking for a world that doesn't exist, you know, hanging on to the past of empires that are no longer here or that's turned into something else. You know, those people don't even exist no more. So a lot of people who you see like espousing that type of ideology, I don't even look at them from the ground level. They a lot of times they're the most vocal, and they're gonna be the ones with the most opposition to a lot of tangible changes that need to be made as far as even mindsets. That I feel like in 2021, they're the greatest, they're one of the biggest threats to just our stagnation as Black people. You know what I mean? Because even go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was agreeing with you. I was agreeing with you. Yeah.
Yeah. And until because what it does is that ideology and that blackness, there's a value in that to especially like politicians or whatever, right? And that's why if you see like the Black political elite in America, right? Like they will pretend to espouse those Pan-African type ideas, right? Simply so that they can get um a voter base of just useful idiots, so to speak. You know what I mean? And just bring everybody up under one umbrella to just move on one accord to whichever way they sway them to, and be able to just placate them with symbolism and tokenism and just, oh, the first black this, oh, the black that, black this, have Nancy Pelosi and all these white people on stage with dashikis on and, evoke some type of emotion out of you. You know what I'm saying? Meanwhile, they give you nothing, they do nothing but just cater to the sentiments of the few. I don't even know if it's the few. I would hope that it's not a majority that's actually swayed in 2021. But I know historically though, from what I've seen, like Pan-Africanism has all, even if you look at the history of Pan-Africanism in Liberia with the American colonization society, like they told you what it was about. When they sent that first group of blacks to Africa, like it wasn't some kumbaya session. It wasn't. So even like the history of it, if you read literature from Marcus Garvey, like it's almost like a way to just galvanize people, black people, to, because let's be honest, right? Coming from a Western perspective, you see white people is thinking of the Messiah complex, right? Like you automatically, but you have black people with that same mentality of like this Messiah complex where they're going to come from the West and save the uncivilized Africans, you know what I'm saying, that don't know no better, that don't know nothing. And by you going to Africa, you're going to automatically assume this position of privilege that you could never have in the West, because a lot of times you weren't even performing at that level. You know what I mean? To be recognized as much. But when you go to Africa, you can automatically climb the ladder and get something that you could never get in America. So, I mean, even from the perspective of an African, I would be weary of it, because you're not getting the best from America with that rhetoric. And that's just the reality of, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's true. I agree with everything you said, because it's a messianic complex. You want to save people. You want to you feel that these people cannot save themselves. You have the magic formula. You have what it takes to save them. You have to save them from themselves. So when you go there, you just magically change things, and it doesn't work that way. Life is much more complex than that. So anyway, thank you all for coming to this conversation today. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to Critical African Thinkers. Here we examine everything under the microscope of logic. Every idea is welcome here. As long as you can prove your point, you're welcome to join in our live streams. And tomorrow I'll be having another live stream with Charles Love. And we're going to be talking about America's obsession with race. I really want to understand why race seems to dominate everything in the American context, and why it isn't so in so many other parts of the world. So maybe something happened um, that made it so that it permeates everything, almost everything in American consciousness. So, Bo, you want to say something?
Power and control, power and control,
Power and control.
power and control. And I'm gonna end it like that, man. I'll check you out tomorrow, man.
All right, all right.
All
Thank
right,
you very
man.
much, Bo. So,
Yep.
thank you guys for coming. Asta, thank you. Anand, thank you. Dr. Mason, thank you. Taron, thank you. Every other person who's come to the live stream today. I hope to catch you tomorrow in the next live stream. So, it's bye for now from me. Have a great night, great morning, great afternoon, wherever you are. Bye.